In the 1880s, a horse thief approaching a frontier homestead at night did not worry first about the sheriff. The sheriff might be 10 miles away, asleep, and useless until sunrise. He worried about the geese screaming beside the pen, the dog sleeping inside the house, the tin cups wired to the gate, and whether the family would wake before his hand even reached the lead rope. These were not quaint farmhouse habits. They were survival tricks built for a world where losing one horse could wreck a season, and opening the wrong door after dark could wreck a family. Number 18 made a weak window much harder to defeat. Number 9 kept a deadly household object closer than the rifle over the mantle. And number 1 explains why some thieves preferred to skip a house entirely. These are 25 forgotten homestead defense tricks people used to survive. If you like old frontier knowledge that still has teeth, subscribe, like the video, and tell me what state you're watching from. Number 25, guard geese near the yard or animal pen. People laugh at geese now because they picture park ponds and children throwing bread. Homesteaders saw something else, a loud, territorial animal that hated surprises and announced them at full volume. Put a few near the wagon shed, horse pen, or side yard, and a quiet approach stopped being quiet. A thief could sometimes calm a dog with meat. Geese were less interested in negotiation. Once they decided a figure in the dark did not belong there, they screamed until the whole yard felt awake. That was their value. They did not need to fight a man. They only needed to ruin secrecy. A thief who wanted to move one horse before anyone stirred suddenly had feathers flaring, wings beating, and a noise carrying straight toward the house. The first defense was not a bullet. It was embarrassment loud enough to wake the family. Number 24, the dog that slept inside, not outside. A dog chained near the barn could warn about coyotes, riders, livestock, wind, and half the normal sounds of rural life. After a while, people learned which barking mattered and which did not. A dog asleep inside the house worked differently. It heard the porch board, the latch, the scrape against a shutter. Then the growl came from the same room where the family was sleeping. That placement changed everything. An intruder could stay outside the dog's reach, but not outside its ears. And once the dog stood up indoors, nobody had to guess whether something had reached the house itself. The animal did not need to win a fight. It had already done its job by getting the adults upright before the stranger controlled the doorway. Number 23, the tin cup line on a gate or pen. Before electricity, a family could build an alarm from trash, string, and suspicion. A low line stretched near a gate, a barn passage, or the path to the horse enclosure. A few tin cups, scraps of metal, or small bells tied where any movement would set them rattling. In daylight, it looked like nothing. At 2 in the morning, it sounded like a confession. The strength of the trick was that the intruder triggered it himself. He did not have to step on the perfect spot or touch the exact wire. He only had to move through the route that seemed most convenient. A boot catches the line. Metal chatters. Someone in the house opens their eyes before the thief reaches what he came for. That is a very old kind of home security, and it still works for the same reason. People trying to be quiet hate sudden noise. Number 22, gravel, oyster shells, or dry brush where feet were not supposed to be quiet. Some families did not need a line or a bell. They used the ground. Scatter something crunchy beneath vulnerable windows, beside a side path, or near the approach to a shed, and bare dirt stopped helping the person sneaking in. Gravel shifted, shells snapped, dry brush cracked under weight. Even a careful step had to land somewhere. This trick mattered because it punished the exact movement an intruder wanted most, the slow, controlled approach. Running men make noise anyway. Sneaking men depend on silence. A few yards of loud footing took that advantage away. Number 21, the Osage orange hedge that made trespassing painful. Before barbed wire spread across the plains, families and farmers planted living barriers. Osage orange grew dense, twisted, and armed with thorns sharp enough to catch clothing, rake skin, and make a straight crossing miserable. A neatly planted hedge did not look dramatic from a distance. Up close, it could turn a shortcut into a bloody nuisance. That gave it defensive value beyond ordinary fencing. A man on legitimate business used the gate. A man trying to cut across unseen looked for gaps, slowed down, cursed under his breath, and risked leaving cloth behind on the thorns. It also controlled movement. Instead of approaching from anywhere, a stranger was pushed toward the openings the family already understood and could watch. The hedge did not stop everyone. It made the easy path belong to the people who lived there. Number 20. Horses tied where theft became noisy and awkward. A horse was not a decorative farm animal. It was transport, labor, emergency escape, and sometimes the difference between planting on time and falling behind for a year. That is why a smart family did not leave its most valuable animal where a thief could cut one rope, swing into the saddle, and disappear cleanly. The animal might be kept closer to the house, behind a gate, or tied so that freeing it required more than one fast motion in the dark. Maybe there was a latch first, maybe a rail, maybe a path too close to the dog or the goose pen. None of that made theft impossible. It made theft clumsy, and a horse thief hated clumsy. Every extra second increased the chance of a snort, a hoof strike, a chain scrape, or a light flaring in the house. Number 19. The wagon or plow left to ruin the cleanest approach. Frontier families did not need stone walls to make a route irritating. A wagon angled near a yard entrance, a plow left beside the easiest line to the barn, a cart parked where someone would naturally cut through in the dark. Each one forced a decision. Go around, climb past it, make contact with wood or iron, lose the straight path. That mattered because people moving with bad intentions prefer routes that feel obvious. A clear line from road to gate, gate to porch, porch to latch. That is convenience. Break that line with something heavy and familiar, and the stranger has to adapt while the family sleeps only yards away. On a homestead, even a wagon left in the right-wrong place could become part of the defense. Number 18. Heavy shutters over vulnerable windows. A frontier window was often the softest part of the whole house. Thin glass could be broken fast, and once a hand reached the latch from outside, a quiet entry was suddenly possible. Heavy shutters changed that. Closed from the inside and pinned, barred, or hooked into place, they turned the easiest opening in the wall into a noisy piece of wood someone had to fight with first. That mattered at night. A thief could test a window gently. He could not quietly argue with a thick shutter that refused to give. It scraped, it rattled. It forced him to pry, yank, or strike harder than he wanted. In a sleeping house, that sound was warning. The shutter did not need to win forever. It only needed to make a secret entry impossible. Number 17. The inside door bar, not the tiny lock. A small latch could fail quickly. A heavy wooden bar across the inside of the door made the entire doorway take the blow. Families set a thick plank into brackets or sockets on both sides of the frame, then left it there through the night. From outside, a stranger might see only a plain door. From inside, that door had become a stubborn piece of structure. A quiet intruder hated that kind of surprise. Picking at a latch is one thing. Hitting a barred door hard enough to break it is another. The first feels like theft. The second announces a fight. A bar forced the man outside to reveal his intention before he entered. If he kicked, the house heard it. If he rammed, the family had time to move. If he gave up, the plank had done its job without anyone touching a weapon. That is why the door bar lasted so long in rural memory. It was cheap, stupidly simple, and better than it looked. It did not promise safety. It made the wrong person spend noise, effort, and time to get closer. Number 16. The lantern trick. Light the stranger, not yourself. Waking to a sound outside, the instinct is to grab a lamp and rush toward the window. That makes the person inside bright and visible, while the yard stays mostly dark. Homesteaders who thought ahead handled light more carefully. A lantern could be set behind them, held low, or placed so its glow reached the porch, gate, or path without turning the watcher into the clearest target in the scene. That gave the house an advantage. A figure at the edge of the yard became a shape to read. Was he alone? Was he moving toward the door? Was he at the horse pen? Did he carry something? Meanwhile, the person inside did not stand glowing in the window like a target painted by firelight. Light was not only comfort. At the right angle, it became control. The stranger outside wanted uncertainty. The family wanted details. A lantern placed well could give one side far more than the other. Number 15. The decoy purse or coin jar. A robber who breaks into a house usually wants proof that the risk was worth it. Find nothing, and he keeps searching. Find a little money fast, and he may decide he has found the prize. Some families understood that ugly piece of psychology. They kept a small purse, a coin jar, or a few bills in a place that looked careless enough to be real and obvious enough to be discovered. The trick was not to be generous. It was to feed the search before the search reached the places that mattered. A thief who opened a drawer and found money felt momentum. He might grab it and leave before trying the hearthstone, the flour bin, the false bottom of a chest, or the wall crack where papers had been hidden. The decoy did not stop a break-in. It shortened one. That kind of defense feels almost insulting because it assumes the intruder is greedy, impatient, and predictable, which is exactly why it worked. Number 14. Real cash and papers hidden where searching felt disgusting or slow. The most valuable things on a homestead were not always shiny. Land papers, debt notes, seed money, a deed, a marriage record, a watch, a few coins saved through a bad season. Losing them could hurt long after the thief disappeared. So families learned not to keep everything where a stranger would look first. Money might sit under a loose hearthstone, where ash and soot made the search unpleasant. Papers could be wrapped and tucked into a wall gap or beneath flooring. Coins might be buried beneath flour, seed, or feed, where rummaging created mess, delay, and noise. The best hiding place was not necessarily impossible to discover. It was annoying enough that a nervous thief under pressure skipped it. That is the part modern people often miss. A home did not need a bank vault to protect value. It needed a place the wrong man would avoid when he thought someone might be waking in the next room. Number 13. Boots, coat, and lamp stage beside the bed. A person jolted awake at night is slow for the first few seconds. Bare feet, cold floor, no light. No idea whether the sound outside was a horse, weather, or someone testing the latch. Families who had lived with that problem built readiness into the bedside itself. Boots close enough to step into, a coat nearby in winter, lamp or matches in the same known reach every night. It sounds ordinary until the house actually wakes in fear. Then ordinary becomes the difference between stumbling and moving. A father does not waste time hunting for shoes. A mother does not grope across a table for light. Someone rises already halfway prepared to act. On a remote homestead, that was not neatness. It was part of the night plan. Number 12. The barn tool hanging exactly where a hand would find it in the dark. A pitchfork buried behind feed sacks was just barn clutter. A pitchfork hung on the first peg inside the door was something else. Homesteaders understood the difference. If a dog erupted, a horse thrashed, or a stranger pushed through the yard after midnight, nobody had time to feel along 3 walls looking for something useful. The hand needed to know where to go before the mind fully caught up. That is why certain tools had places that barely changed. A fork by the barn entrance, a wagon wrench on the same nail. A heavy wooden singletree leaned in the same corner. They were farm tools all day, but their position after dark was deliberate. A man crossing the threshold of the barn expected darkness. He did not expect the owner to reach left without looking and come back holding iron. Number 11. The stove poker or iron tool close to the sleeping room. The fire was already part of the house, which meant the poker was already allowed to be there. No explanation, no unusual preparation. Just a black iron rod beside the hearth, heavy enough to break fingers, wrists, or a cheekbone if someone came through the wrong doorway at night. That ordinary placement made it more useful than a weapon stored properly, but stored too far away. A farmhouse waking in darkness was chaotic. Children crying, someone whispering to stay still, a latch moving where no latch should move. In that moment, a poker near the sleeping space was not symbolic. It was the fastest hard object a person could grip with both hands. A thief expected fear from inside the room. He might not expect iron waiting beside the coals. Number 10. The axe handle behind the door. Not always the axe, the handle. That detail mattered. A full axe could kill too easily, swing poorly in a tight room, and turn a bad encounter into a corpse on the threshold. A thick hickory handle was different. It was quick, heavy, and brutal without being unwieldy. Farmers knew exactly what a good handle could do to a forearm, a knee, or a jaw. Kept behind a door, it did not look like a trap. It looked like a tool waiting to be repaired or put back to use. But when someone shoved at the entrance after dark, the person inside could step aside, grab wood, and meet the first shoulder that crossed the frame. That is the kind of old homestead practicality people underestimate. They did not always want a shootout. Sometimes they wanted one clean crack that made the intruder reconsider his entire plan. Number 9. The cast iron skillet within reach at night. The skillet had a kind of perfect innocence. Every kitchen had one. No one needed to explain why it was in the house. But an old cast iron pan was a dense slab of metal with a handle designed for control, and frontier families knew that better than anyone. A skillet kept near the bed, beside a chair, or within reach of the kitchen doorway gave a woman or older child something serious to swing before anyone reached the gun. That mattered in houses where trouble did not always announce itself politely. A man could step inside while another family member was still waking. A drunk could pound at the wrong door. A thief could force a latch and come through expecting hesitation. What met him instead might be 8 pounds of iron coming sideways at head level. The skillet is easy to joke about now because it belongs to breakfast. On a homestead, that was part of its advantage. It was not displayed as a weapon. It was not hidden like contraband. It simply existed in the room where people lived, slept nearby, and refused to be helpless. A rifle over the mantel said something about the household. A skillet within arm's reach said something more practical. Number 8, the shotgun was not always displayed. Sometimes it was staged. The romantic image is the long gun hanging over the fireplace. It looks good in a painting. It is less impressive if a person has to cross a dark room toward it, while someone is already at the door. Families who thought about real trouble cared less about display and more about reach. A gun might rest behind a bedroom partition, near a favored night chair, or in a corner known to every adult in the house. That difference was not cosmetic. It changed the first 10 seconds. If a strange noise came from the yard, the weapon was not part of the decor. It was already inside the response plan. The same logic shaped everything else on this list. The item mattered, but the location mattered almost as much. A shotgun too far away could be admired. A shotgun stage within reach could decide whether the next sound outside got closer. Number 7. Women's defense plan when men were away. Frontier homes were not protected only by men sitting awake in boots with rifles nearby. Men rode to town. They hauled loads, worked distant fields, stayed out with stock, joined drives, or slept away from the house for reasons that had nothing to do with drama. When that happened, the first line of decision-making often belonged to the woman left inside with children, food stores, livestock nearby, and no guarantee that help was close. That is why the strongest homestead defense plans were not vague household habits. They were routines someone could actually use alone. Door barred before dark, lamp staged, dog inside. Children told where to stay if there was a hard knock. The nearest heavy object kept where a hand could reach it. A stranger calling from the porch did not automatically get the door opened just because his voice sounded calm. The real test came in the pause before answering. Was the rider known? Why had he come after sunset? Did he stay back from the threshold, or did he step too close? Was there another shape in the yard? A woman on a remote homestead could not afford to confuse politeness with safety. She had to judge tone, distance, timing, and whether the man outside respected the barrier between them. That part rarely survives in the cleaner frontier myth, but it should. A defense system that only worked when the strongest adult male happened to be home was a weak system. Families survived because the person who remained behind still knew the door, the lamp, the dog, the children, and exactly what to grab if the voice outside changed. Number 6. The back way out kept clear. A homestead family did not always plan to stand in one room and wait for trouble to choose the terms. Sometimes the smartest defense was knowing which door, window, or side passage could get children out of the house before the front entrance became dangerous. That meant not stacking crates in the wrong corner, not blocking the rear exit with tools, and not treating every spare path as storage. This mattered most in small houses where one intruder at the main door could trap everyone inside by accident. A clear back way created another option. One adult could hold attention at the front while another moved children toward a safer room, a nearby outbuilding, or open ground that led toward a neighbor. A house with only one useful exit could become a cage. Families who thought ahead made sure it did not. Number 5. A saddled plan. Tack and a horse ready for the emergency ride. Nobody kept every horse fully saddled all night as a rule. That would have been impractical. But frontier families still understood the emergency ride. Tack hung where it belonged. A bridle was not buried under clutter. The best horse for a fast message was known. If someone needed to get help, wake neighbors, or ride toward town before sunrise, the household could move without losing 10 minutes to confusion. That kind of preparation mattered because distance was an enemy. A sheriff miles away was not help until someone reached him. A neighbor on the next spread was useless until someone warned him. A family that knew who would ride, which horse to take, and where the gear sat had already solved half the problem before panic started. In a place without telephones, speed was a defense tool. Number 4, the coded knock, whistle, or call only family understood. Not every voice at the door deserved an answer. A familiar greeting helped, but it could be copied. Families sometimes relied on a certain knock, a repeated whistle from the yard, or a call and response pattern that meant the person outside was expected. It did not need to be elaborate. It only needed to be theirs. That made nighttime decisions easier. A child coming back from an outbuilding, a husband returning late, a neighbor arriving in urgency. Each could signal before anyone lifted the bar or opened the shutter. The trick was not paranoia. It was avoiding one of the oldest frontier mistakes, opening a door because a stranger sounded calm enough to trust. A house that demanded the right signal was harder to fool. Number 3, the neighbor signal after dark. The frontier myth loves the isolated cabin. One family against a black horizon. Real survival often depended on people noticing one another. A lantern hung in an unusual place. A horn sounded at the wrong hour. A rider sent hard down a known lane. Even a bell or repeated call from one property to the next could mean the same thing. Something is wrong here. Those signals worked because neighbors learned each other's normal habits. A light in a front window at dusk meant nothing. The same light swinging outside after midnight meant something else. Dogs barking briefly was ordinary. Dogs barking hard while a lantern moved toward the barn could make another family pause and listen. Rural life was quiet enough that deviations carried information. That did not make every homestead safe. It made some households less alone than they looked. A thief counting on isolation now had to wonder who else might see, hear, or come riding if the yard got loud enough. Number 2, the household that looked less worth robbing than it really was. A family could not always stop someone from deciding whether a house looked profitable, but it could shape the impression. Do not leave tools of obvious value near the road. Do not let visitors see where cash is counted. Do not display every good saddle, brass object, firearm, or piece of silver as if the home were a catalog. A homestead that appeared modest could be safer than one that advertised comfort too well. This was not about pretending to be destitute. It was about understanding how desire works in a criminal mind. A thief with 3 options might avoid the place that looked poor, noisy, and inconvenient. He might choose the house with cleaner windows, better horses visible from the lane, and signs that money passed through it more often. Frontier people knew envy could travel as fast as gossip. Sometimes defense began with not giving strangers a reason to remember your house too clearly. That is one of the dirtiest tricks on the list, because it does not stop danger with strength. It redirects danger toward whoever looked easier, richer, or less careful. Number 1, the anti-horse thief pact. Defense did not stop at your fence. Horse theft could wound a family for months. A stolen horse meant lost work, lost mobility, lost trading power, and in some cases, lost survival margin. That is why rural communities formed anti-horse thief associations, watch networks, and mutual pursuit agreements. If a horse disappeared, the owner was not always expected to chase alone. Neighbors could be alerted, riders gathered, roads watched, and descriptions carried outward faster than one household could manage. This changed the thief's calculation. Stealing from one family no longer meant outrunning one angry man. It could mean outrunning men from several farms who already knew which creek crossings, ferry points, roads, and market towns mattered. A stolen animal was difficult to hide forever when the whole local network had reason to care. And that is the strongest forgotten defense trick in the entire homestead world. Make the crime continue after the thief leaves your yard. Dogs, geese, shutters, door bars, hidden papers, staged tools. All of that helped a family survive the first minutes. But a reputation for collective pursuit helped stop trouble before it chose the house at all. The safest homestead was not always the one with the hardest door. It was the one a thief believed would wake half the county. Which of these would you actually trust after dark? The geese, the hidden cache, the stage skillet, or the anti-horse thief pact? Put it in the comments and tell me what state you're watching from. And if you want more forgotten frontier knowledge that still has teeth, subscribe, and like the video.